Welcome to the second day of TCAP review for 7th grade social studies. Today we will be covering Tennessee Social Studies Standards. 7.01. Identify and locate the geographical features of East Asia, including China, Gobi Desert, Himalayan Mountains, Japan, Korean Peninsula, Pacific Ocean, Plateau of Tibet, Sea of Japan, East Sea, Yangtze River, Yellow River. 7.02. Describe how the reunification of China prior to the Tang Dynasty helped spread Buddhist beliefs. 7.03. Summarize agricultural, commercial, and technological developments during the Song dynasties, and describe the role of Confucianism during the Song. 7.04. Examine the rise of the Mongol Empire, including the conquests of Genghis Khan. 7.05. Describe Kublai Khan's conquest of China and explain how he was able to maintain control of the Yuan Empire. Because of its size and different geographical features, East Asia has a wide range of climates and ecosystems. Russia lies to the north but has never been considered part of East Asia. Mountains surround much of East Asia and separate it from Central Asia and the West. The most famous of these mountains are the Himalayan mountains. Mount Everest, the highest mountain in the world, is located in the Himalayas. The Plateau of Tibet lies below the Himalayas inside East Asia and is mostly grasslands. It is the largest plateau in the world. It is also the plateau with the highest elevation above sea level. So high it has dry, thin air. It contains several glaciers and is the source of many rivers in Asia, including the Yellow River and the Yangtze River in China, the Tibetan Plateau, and the Taklamakan Desert serve as China's and East Asia's western borders. The Taklamakan Desert is known as the Sea of Death because of its extreme dryness and huge size. The mountains to the northwest of the Taklamakan Desert are also part of China. They prevent rain from reaching the Taklamakan Desert. Mountains form a barrier with Russia in the northeast. The Gobi Desert is an important geographical feature of East Asia and helped shape its history. The fifth largest desert in the world and 1,200 miles long, it has served as China's border with Mongolia. However, parts of the Gobi Desert lie within Mongolia. Mongols, barbarians from north of the Gobi Desert, regularly attacked Chinese villages and cities on the border. The Gobi Desert has freezing winters and hot summers. Yellow River Valley. Today, China's civilization developed in the river valleys of the Yellow River, the Huanghe River, to the north, and the Yangtze River to the south. The Yellow River Valley is a flat plain and is called the cradle of Chinese civilization. The region to the south of the Yangtze River is hilly. China expanded from the river valley and is considered the oldest continuous civilization in the world. Geographically and culturally, China has divided into North and South China by the Huya River, which flows between the Yellow and Yangtze rivers. Rainfall and weather differ between the two regions. Wheat is grown in North China, while rice is grown in the south. Most Chinese have lived in the valley areas or on the coast. This region is sometimes called China proper. Once China became a unified country, it has always been the largest country in East Asia. The geographic barriers of mountains, deserts, and Pacific Ocean isolated China from the rest of the world. Beginning circa 1000 BCE, the Chinese name for their civilization was the Middle Kingdom because they believed it was in the middle of the world. The Pacific Ocean is the largest ocean in the world and the eastern border of East Asia. China is over 7,000 miles from the United States west coast on the Pacific Ocean, and over 4,500 miles from Australia, the island country of Japan, and the Korean Peninsula that became the country of Korea, were both settled approximately 10,000 years ago. Today, Russia owns the coastland from which the Korean Peninsula extends, but Korea and Japan are both part of East Asia. The Sea of Japan, the East Sea, separates the Korea Peninsula and the Russian coast from Japan. The Sea of Japan is almost completely shut off from the Pacific Ocean. It is less salty than the ocean and has only 3 straits, narrow water passages, that open to the Pacific Ocean. The Sea of Japan protected Japan from invasion. DNA research shows Han Chinese, Koreans, and Japanese share a common ancestor dating to circa 3,500 years ago. Chinese history. Last year, you learned that the Han Dynasty created a golden age and established Confucianism as the culture of China. Confucianism focused on social harmony through obedience to hierarchies, beginning with the family ruled by the father. The relationship between elders and young people was also important in society. A person's superior was awarded the highest level of respect. If a person acted the right way, according to his or her relationship to others, order was maintained. When people stopped respecting their elders, disorder and chaos reigned. Confucius's relationship, hierarchy, ruler, minister, father, son, elder brother, younger brother, husband, wife, friend. The Han Dynasty fell in 220 CE. It was followed by centuries of civil war and then dynasties that ruled for brief periods of time. The legend of Mulan, the female warrior who fought in her father's place, dates from sometime during this period. She may have been a real person. Because China was ruled by emperors, much of Chinese history is about different members of the emperor's court struggling for power. Emperors had many wives and children, and they fought among themselves to rule China. Military commanders sometimes led uprisings to overthrow weak or wicked emperors. Sometimes even peasants became emperors. The spread of Buddhism. Buddhist monks traveled to China during the Han Dynasty. As a belief, Buddhism seeks an understanding of suffering that leads to enlightenment, personal peace, and understanding. Buddhism also teaches that the soul is reborn, a process called reincarnation, until a person achieves enlightenment. When wars broke out between northern and southern kingdoms, Buddhist monks first became advisors to rulers in the north. Buddhist teachings then spread to southern China. Buddhism became popular as a philosophy among the upper classes of China. Buddhism also spread to Korea circa 300 CE and then to Japan. The Tang Dynasty, 618–907 CE. The Tang Dynasty governed China from 618 to 907 CE. During this time, China became the most powerful and economically successful country in the world. The Chinese capital at Xi'an was the largest city in the world. The Chinese population grew to over 80 million people. The first emperor of the Tang Dynasty, Emperor Gaozu of Tang, reunited China. He brought back civil service exams, tests for people who wanted to work for the government, and standardized a new currency, system of money. His reforms stabilized the government. Emperor Gaozu of Tang poetry, painting, and dancing flourished under the Tang Dynasty. Tea became a popular drink. Thanks to merchants, monks, and travelers, Buddhism became widespread throughout China. The state sponsored the religion and built many temples and shrines across China. Many people became monks and nuns at Buddhist temples. Others donated to temples and monasteries. People felt Buddhism offered them more spiritual rewards in the afterlife and gave them hope for an end to their suffering. Buddhism is a belief system that worked with ancestor worship. Although Buddhism is not concerned with the worship of a god or gods, in China, Buddha came to be worshipped as a god. However, conflict developed between followers of Buddhism and Confucianism. One Confucian historian wrote, "Buddha was a man of the barbarians who did not speak the language of China and wore clothes of a different fashion. His sayings did not concern the ways of our ancient kings, nor did his manner of dress conform to their laws. He understood neither the duties that bind sovereign and subject, nor the affections of father and son." Eventually, the Tang Dynasty turned against Buddhism because it pulled citizens away from other activities approved by Confucianism. In 844, the Chinese emperor abolished the temples and religious orders. Although the emperor died soon afterward, Buddhism never fully regained its glory. The Tang Dynasty came to an end as a result of flooding, famine, and a peasant rebellion. More short-lived dynasties followed until the Song Dynasty rose to power. The Song Dynasty, 960–1279 CE. The Song Dynasty began in the region north of the Yangtze River. Song emperors supported Confucianism. They used civil service exams requiring detailed knowledge of Confucius's teachings. These civil service exams were important because they created a system of educated government workers who became part of the elite. An elite is a group with high social status which usually rules or helps rule a country. Unlike many other societies, China did not have an elite made up of just military leaders and nobles, members of the inherited highest class or aristocracy. China relied on the use of many levels of government officials. However, Buddhism remained a popular religion, along with ancestor worship. Ancestor worship is the practice of contacting dead ancestors for spiritual guidance or help. Most Chinese were peasant farmers, but large cities developed in China with theaters that could hold thousands of people. Two cities, Kaifeng and Hangzhou, contained almost 1 million people. In contrast, Paris, France, in 1200 CE, had approximately 110,000 people. In cities, the Song government operated fire stations in the cities, as well as homes for the elderly and public clinics. There were many public festivals. Social clubs developed around shared interests, such as poetry or music. Markets lined the streets. The Chinese were the first people to eat out in restaurants. Chinese farmers grew new types of rice that resisted drought, and grew so rapidly, farmers could harvest 2 crops of rice a year. This helped feed China's growing population. To better use the land, they practiced terrace farming. Terrace farming cuts sloped land into raised flat areas like steps. Terrace farming also reduces water loss. Tea became an important trade item for China on the Silk Road to the west. Iron was also an important industry. The Chinese were the first to use coal in iron production. 3 important Chinese inventions during the Song dynasty would change life around the world. Gunpowder for weapons. The Chinese had invented fireworks by the Han dynasty. During the Song dynasty, they weaponized gunpowder in rockets, bombs, and fire arrows that used included a ball of gunpowder which would burst into flames. The Chinese invented the multiple-stage rocket, which is used today by NASA. The magnetic compass. Like gunpowder, the magnetic compass had been invented by the Chinese earlier, but the Song first began to use it for navigation and were the first to discover true north, the north according to the Earth's axis. Sailors and travelers no longer had to rely on just the stars and sun for travel. Movable type. Movable type sets tiles with ideographs, characters like Chinese writing, or letters into a frame. The letters are then inked and pressed onto paper. The tiles can be used over and over again. Movable type makes it possible to print books quickly and cheaply. The Chinese in the Song dynasty also invented the odometer, paper money, the mechanical clock, and noodles, spaghetti. Islamic merchants used Chinese technology in their empire and experimented with improving it. The Silk Road was primarily responsible for the spread of Chinese technology to other parts of the globe. The Song dynasty is often divided into 2 periods: rule by the Northern Song from 960 to 1126, and then rule by the Southern Song from 1127 to 1279. The dynasty ended when the Mongols successfully invaded China.